We kicked off this series, Family Vacation, last week, looking at this idea about how the family is crazy. The family is a little bit messy, and that the definition of family that used to be years ago is now no longer. That family is all over the place. And the definition of what a family looks like is different across the board nowadays. But last week we talked about what would it look like if we changed that up a little bit. If we lived our families in such a way that it felt like a vacation, where we weren't just looking to go from one rest point and then running until the next rest point. Now, what if life looked a little bit different for our families? And last week we started right at the beginning with Adam and Eve and the fall, and we talked about how in the earliest family, the foundation was built on not just truth of what they did wrong, but also grace. The truth and grace. And we talked about this idea about how mistakes hurt the family, but grace heals the family. And there needs to be grace accompanied with truth in order for the family foundation to be built. To be built. Using that as our platform, grace and truth, moving forward this morning. I'm going to pray, and then we're going to jump right in. God, we're thankful for today. Father, we're thankful for the time of worship that we had. Father, as we sit for a moment, God, we encounter your word. I pray that it's not about us. It's not about what we want. It's not about what we think. But God, I pray that your word and your spirit will challenge who we are. Father, I pray for the families this morning, whether it's a family of one or a family of 20. Father, I pray that our families will be built on grace and truth. Father, from that, I pray that you will guide us. Father, you have a passion and a design for the family that's way better than ours. And so I pray that through this morning, the next several weeks, that you will show that to us. Father, we're thankful for your goodness. It's in your name we pray. Amen. And so when I was in college, I had a roommate. His name was Charlie. Charlie and I were sitting one day and we were eating lunch, and there was several girls that we were eating with. There was a whole table of us, but there was several girls at the table, and they were talking about how they had a plant in their dorm room and that they had killed it 3 times. All right, and so Charlie and I, we maybe, this part's a little bit cloudy, but we may have been making fun of them for killing this plant multiple times. Not the same plant. They killed 3 separate plants, and it was not that far into the semester. And so finally they said, all right, yeah, we get it. We're good at killing plants. But how about this? You guys go to Walmart, you pick out a plant, and if it survives in your dorm room through the end of the semester, we'll take you guys out to eat. All right, Chuck was built like me, which means if we heard free meal, we're up to the challenge. Okay? And so we went to Walmart and we picked out this plant. I have no idea what kind of plant it was. It wouldn't have made a difference anyway. We picked out this plant that we thought, that we would keep this thing alive. And that was the goal, okay? It wasn't for it to produce flowers or anything like that. We're just looking for this guy to stay alive to the end of the semester, which means free meal for Chuck and I. And so we get this plant. We bring it back to our dorm room. Okay, and we set it on top of our refrigerator in our door, right next to the window. And we took care of it like it was our baby. It set it, and we had a special cup for watering the plant, and we would leave it sit next to the plant. We were determined to succeed at this challenge. And so we would water the plant, and when we'd get up in the morning, we'd pull blinds up so that the sun could get in, because plants need sun too. And so we pulled blinds up, sun would come in, and this plant was doing awesome. It was growing a little bit, it was getting bigger, it was green, it was, everything like that. What we did not factor in is that both Chuck and I, we were leaving for spring break, which is like 10 days where we neglected our baby, all right? We just left it out there, just sitting on top of our fridge, not taking care of it at all. And we came back to find this dry, wilted, sorry-looking plant. And we thought, no! Because Chuck and I, when they said free meal, we're not thinking like small fry at McDonald's, like you buy your kids that thing. We're thinking steakhouse in Joplin. We keep this plant alive. We're choosing where we're going. Okay? And so we take this plant and we bring it outside and we water, because it was dry zone, we water it, and now it's getting real sun because it's outside, not through the window or whatever. And every day we would check this plant. And a couple days in, we noticed that it started to pick up a little bit. We're like, there's hope, come on, little plant. We're cheering it along or whatever. And so we pour a little bit more water in each day, and the sun hits it. And about 4 or 5 days later, this plant resurrects itself and comes back to life. And Chuck and I, we're like proud parents. We bring this thing back in, set it on top of our fridge. Still alive, still kicking. And it made it all the way through the semester. Of which we took the plant, we brought it up to the girls' dorm where they were at. And we called them down to the lobby. And it was sitting on the table, and Chuck and I were standing there. We're like proud dads. Just standing there with our plant right there. We kept it alive the whole semester long. Victory, free meal, which we probably didn't eat, but we ate every bit of it. And just basic science, a plant needs certain nutrients in order to grow. There's water and there's sun, correct? And this is just kind of basic science knowledge. It needs those 2 nutrients to be alive. If we neglected those, like we did when we left for spring break, then what happens to the plant? It dies. It dies. You see, there are certain things that are needed in order for the plant to grow. Right now in our community, it is planting season, which means that seeds are put in the ground. We're starting to see them come up out of the ground. And I know some of you are farmers. And I know that didn't just happen by accident. There was a plan in place, there was a strategy in place, and the soil needed certain nutrients in order for the plants to grow. That's why we rotate crops and all this other stuff. In order to get the best production, in order to keep the plants alive, and in order to yield the best crop, there has to be a plan, and there has to be certain nutrients in order to make that happen. And I wonder if we take the same approach to our families. You see, because for a family to be healthy and for a family to be alive, there needs to be something in the middle of it. There needs to be a plan. Do we have a plan in place, or are we just hoping that everything is going to turn out okay? If you walked up to a farmer in our community and said, hey, how'd planting season go? Oh, it was great. I just walked out to the field and I had this handful of seed and I said, all right, seed, do your job. And I just chucked it up into the field and that's all I did. And it's going to be a great year. What would you think about that farmer? 1, you're a terrible farmer. Okay? 2, you're going to be really hungry this winter because you're not going to make a thing. And you would not think that that's a good plan or strategy for yielding a good crop and making sure the plants are alive. But when it comes to growing our families, I'm afraid that too often that's our approach. We don't have a plan. We don't think about it. We just have this hope or expectation that everything is going to turn out well. That our marriages are going to be healthy. Our kids are going to love Jesus. Our families are going to be close. But if asked how we're making that happen, I'm afraid we don't have an answer sometimes. We don't have a plan in place. And then, when things fall apart, when your marriage hits the rocks, when your kids start being defiant, then we're stressed out. We're worn out. Because we have not yielded the families that we have pictured in our mind. And so what do we do? If you brought a Bible, go ahead and open up to the book of Deuteronomy. It's in the Old Testament towards the beginning. Deuteronomy chapter 6, just to kind of set us up as to where we're at. Deuteronomy chapter 5 contains what we know as the 10 Commandments. It is the very basic law. The book of Deuteronomy contains law and instruction for the people of God moving forward. And so chapter 5 is the 10 Commandments, which The Ten Commandments display the qualities of God. When you look at these 10 things that are said, don't do this, and don't do this, and don't do this, it's not just a whole bunch of laws of don't do it. It's expressing the character and the love and the qualities of who God is. And so from that, on the coattails of that, then we move into chapter 6. And in chapter 6, we get what's known as the Shema prayer, which is this Jewish prayer that was recited all the time, which was very common among the Jewish people. To love the Lord your God and love neighbor. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Jesus repeated this later on. But then where we're going to pick up in verse 7. Because we have all of this law. Now we have how to love God. But then what do we do with it? And what we do with it is the plan in place for the family. Verse 7. Impress them in all of these things, these commands. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. You see this word impress here. And so many times when we read this word, impress them on your children, we have this idea in our mind that, tell them all the time. Tell them all the time that God loves them. Impress them upon your children. Tell them God loves them. But what this word impress means is to leave a vivid impression of. To leave a vivid impression or expression of. And so what we're being taught here is for our families to be healthy, for our families to be alive and vibrant, and that we need to leave a vivid impression and expression of the characters and qualities of who God is. I mean, all these 10 commandments, do not murder. It's not that God just doesn't want us killed. Everybody's because he has a quality of and character of love for his people. Don't commit adultery. It's not just because he doesn't want us to commit adultery. It's because he values marriage and he values the marriage relationship. And we see the characters and qualities of God, the characteristics of who he is in all of these commandments. And so then when we're taught, impress them, leave this impression, this expression on your children. Question. Do we, as parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, do we leave a vivid expression of who God is for our family to see? Do we leave a picture that is clear and concise of who God is for our family to see and then follow? And it's not just a once in a while thing. Well, Matt, when are we supposed to do this? All the time. And that's why I said talk about it. Talk about who God is when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. In other words, all the time. All the time we should be impressing or expressing who God is for our family. And yes, it mentions children here. But I believe the same is true for our spouse. Impress the qualities and characteristics of who God is for our spouse to see. Talk about it when you sit at home. And the same is true for our parents. The same is true for our cousins or however else you want to draw the family line. And show the characteristics, live out the characteristics and the qualities of who God is that your family can see. You see, there is a recognition here right from the very beginning. That healthy families require constant attention to the characteristics and the qualities of God. Our truth for this morning is this. When we hear this, our truth for this morning is this. When it comes to our families, we cannot expect what we do not cultivate. We cannot expect what we do not cultivate. Which means that if we expect for our children to love Jesus, we have to cultivate that. If we expect to have healthy marriages, then we have to cultivate that. The same way that we described the earlier farmer who just throws seed out into the field and has this expectation that it's going to be this great crop. It's ridiculous. Well, the same is true for our families. We can't just expect healthy marriages and expect our children to love Jesus and expect all of these things if we don't cultivate it within them. We can't expect for our families to be close if we don't cultivate a family that is close. There's several approaches to make this happen. These jars are filled with soil, potting soil. Approach number one, that we want a healthy family, and where it's not filled with stress and worry and all this craziness and mess. Okay, so we take some seed and we plant it, okay, and then we take basic nutrients of water and we water it a little bit, and it's in the sun. But then we just kind of let it go. And that's the last time we really tell them about it. And in some of our families, this is what has happened. Where we get married, we say our vows, we make promises, but then we don't ever take care of it. We tell our kids about Jesus. We tell our kids that He loves them. But then that's the end of it. And so it just sits. And it's not nurtured and it's not taken care of. Another approach in culture is that we have the soil and we take some seed, we plant the seed, and we water it so it's ready to go. But we recognize that the conditions outside of this plant are not good. Okay? In other words, the conditions of culture outside of our children or outside of our marriages, it's not a healthy, godly culture. And so what we do is we hide it. And we hide it in order to protect it. And we hide it from all bit of culture, and we hide it from everything around it, because that's not about God, and that's not like God, and so we're going to hide completely. But in turn, what happens when we hide completely? Eventually, the child is going to engage culture. Eventually, your marriage is going to hit some discomfort. And when completely hidden, the sun is blocked out. And so the plant dies. Approach number three is we have soil, it's healthy soil. And we have some seeds, and so we plant our seeds, we water it, and we have this expectation. We have this expectation that our kids are going to love Jesus. We have this expectation that our marriage is going to be healthy. But we've yet to surrender parts of our life to Jesus. And so while we expect our kids to love Jesus, we have an anger problem. And we end up hurting our kids in the process. And we have a problem of lust that we've not dealt with, and so we end up throwing our character into the mix. And we can't guard our tongue, and so we say hurtful things to our spouse. And our character that we have not dealt with yet with Jesus begins to be impressed upon our kids as well. And while the intention is for them to love Jesus and for them to respect us, we have characteristics in our life that we've yet to surrender. And while we continue to pour them in on top of our kids, we hurt the seed. And it ends up broken because of our character issues. I mean, the truth is the character that we demonstrate as parents is the character that is cultivated in our children. And so what they see from us, most of the time, is what they will become. Again, expectation, cultivation. Come over to jar number 4. Jar number 4, man, we love the church. We love Jesus. We want our kids to love Jesus. We want our marriage to be healthy. And so we say, you know what? We're going to plant this seed. And we know, in order for this seed to be healthy, we need as much Jesus as possible. We need as much Jesus as possible. We need as much Bible knowledge as possible. We need to be at church as often as possible. And while all of those are good things, we have such a desire. We have such a desire for our child to love Jesus, or for our spouse to love the church, or whatever, that we know that the seed is there, and so we plant the seed. There's not really soil for it to grow yet, because we're forcing this in, and then we just start to water it. And we pour more and more in, and more in. And too much of a good thing ends up drowning the seed. Children walk away from the church because they're so tired of just being beaten with the truth. They're tired of never having any family time, and all their family time just being at church. So the seed dies. The last approach is we have this soil, we plant the seed, and then we're here on Sunday morning, which means that we water it. And while we're here on Sunday morning, the seed has been watered. But then it's time to leave church. So we close it up. We put it away until next Sunday. And on Sunday morning, we tell our families, you need to love Jesus. We need to love Jesus. Jesus loves us. But then all week long, it's absent until it's time for church on Sunday morning again. And then we pull the seat back out, and we check our kids in downstairs, and we bring them to their classroom, and we expect that their Sunday school teacher has a lesson ready to teach them, and they teach them, and they water the plant a little bit more. Oh, the service is over. We close it up, and we put it away until next week. And then all week long, there's a void. There's nothing there. And they don't see the character and the qualities of who God is. And I mean, we can replace the kids with your marriage here. You don't have kids or whatever. Your marriage, you come to church on Sunday thinking, we're going to go to church and think about the love of God, and that will fix our marriage. And so we come to church and we worship and we hear some of God's word, and it makes us feel better until about Monday afternoon when our spouse disappoints us, and then we're back to square one. And we think, well, we'll go to church on Sunday, and the preacher will fix it based on something that he says. And then our marriage will get healthy again. Or maybe it's just our relationship with God. We water it on Sundays. We pull it out on Sundays. We put a little bit of nutrients in, and then we close it up, and we don't touch it until next Sunday. And then we bring it back out and we say, okay, I'm here, I'm ready to go, God. Well, what plant is going to grow if it's only taken care of once a week? But yet all week long, it's ignored. See, I'm afraid. And don't get me wrong, I love these things. I was a part of these things. But when it comes to our kids, I'm just going to speak about our kids right now. I'm afraid. This is the trend that I see the most. And I'm afraid what we're teaching our children, that you need to love sports and then attend church with us on Sunday. And we want you to love 4-H and then attend church with us on Sunday. We need you to love going to work in order to pay for college and then attend church on Sunday. We want you to love being well-known and popular as a part of your class. And then we want you to attend church with us on Sunday. I want you to love getting good grades and being at the top of your class, and other people can know that you're getting good grades and at the top of your class, and then you can attend church with us on Sunday. I want you to love having a beautiful appearance and being well-liked, and then attend church with us on Sunday. Now the problem is that at some point, normally around the age of 18 or 19, we stop making our kids, or stop having the ability to make our kids attend church with us. And what happens is we train them to love all of these other things and just attend a building. But yet we wonder why, at age 18 or 19, our children are walking away from the church. Instead, we need to teach them to love Jesus and then be a part of baseball. To love Jesus and then be a part of 4-H. To love Jesus and get good grades. And so that way, when they turn 18 and 19 and they go to college, they don't just walk away from a building. They have a relationship with Jesus inside of them. Where there's no lid put on and hid week in and week out. Where they see the characters and the qualities of Jesus in their home every single day of the week from their parents and their grandparents. We've got this warped view right now. And it's because of how busy we are in culture that we go to church to raise our kids to love the church, and then we go do everything else for 6 other days of the week. And then we come back to Jesus. We cannot expect our kids to love Jesus if we only cultivate it in them 1 day a week. We cannot expect what we do not cultivate. We cannot expect healthy marriages if we don't cultivate healthy marriages. The book of Proverbs, book of wisdom, chapter 22, verse 6 says this: to start children off on the way they should go, and even when they're old, they will not turn from it. Which means that we cultivate a healthy relationship with Jesus based on the characters and qualities of Jesus. And when they're old, they won't walk away from it. We cannot expect what we do not cultivate. I remember waking up on Sunday morning, my freshman year in college. I remember my alarm going off 5 or 6 times, to be honest about it. My alarm going off, and it was the first time I remember waking up thinking, my dad's not going to knock on the door and tell me to get up. My mom's not going to holler at me, Matthew, get out of bed. 5 times. It's not going to happen. I remember laying in my dorm room after my alarm went off, thinking to myself, I could roll over here and I could go back to sleep. And being a dumb college freshman, I could sleep till noon. It'd be great. And there is not a soul that's going to come and wake me up and make me go. I remember thinking to myself, miss out. And it wasn't church that I was missing out on. It was my first Sunday in Joplin. I didn't know any church. I didn't know anybody at any church. It wasn't a church that I was missing out on. It wasn't some great band that I was going to miss out on. It was a little bit of Jesus that I might have missed out on. We were talking to my dad that night. He said, "You go to church this morning?" I'm like, "Yeah, what are you talking about? Of course." It never entered my mind and then go. I said, "I was just wondering." I said, "Yeah, I went." And then we talked about where I went in church and stuff. And looking back at it, my parents didn't do everything right. I'm nowhere close to perfect. But I'm thankful that I have a mom and dad who decided a long time ago to cultivate a relationship with Jesus more than an attendance policy to avoid. They chose, if I was ever going to love Jesus, they needed to teach me about the characteristics and qualities of Jesus based on the way that they lived, and not just someplace where they belong. And now as the parent, I recognize, one, that's a choice, but two, it takes sacrifice. Sacrifice that's demonstrated to us by Jesus. That we as God's family, God's children, He didn't have to go to the cross to bring us forgiveness. He chose to. He chose to because He recognized that for us to become like Him, to spend eternity with Him, it required sacrifice. It cost Him His life. This morning, what relationship with your family are you setting unrealistic expectations on that you are not cultivating? What relationship needs to be cultivated in order to meet those expectations? Maybe better yet, where is it in your family, whether 1 or 20, where you need to practice sacrifice so that way people don't just hear about Jesus, but they see the characters and the qualities of Him?